What's up, students? It's time. It is time for distant learning. That's right. Music appreciation, distant learning with yours truly, Mr. Imamura. Thank you for tuning in today. I have a very special guest that I would like to introduce to you today. His name is Ian Vo. Put your hands together for Ian, ladies and gentlemen. Students.
Hi.
Yes, Ian. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Ian, if I take a look in your background there, I see that you have a massive collection of CDs. Is that correct?
Yes, it's very disorganized. I don't even go there. It's pretty much just nostalgia. Everything is, I operate like everybody else online and streaming now. But yes, that is a stack of CDs. Yes.
Now, what variety of music of do you have back there of those CDs?
It's mostly jazz records, some classical records. That's
and
pretty
I
much
know
it. Yeah.
Awesome. And I notice also you have a couple different pieces of art in back of you. Can you share what those are?
Oh, okay. Well, this one, my wife made that when I think she was in high school when she made that.
And can you describe what that is for us
Oh,
at
yeah,
home?
yeah. Here, yeah. Sorry. It's a trombone player.
Oh, amazing. That looks cool.
Chalk, yeah. Done in 2001.
Amazing. Yeah. Now, a trombone. Okay. Trombone is what kind of instrument? Because for the students that are listening right now, trombone is a brass instrument, correct?
Correct, yes.
And you play what type of instrument?
I play woodwinds. I primarily play saxophone, but it's common for saxophone players to do what's called in the industry doubling. So I double on flute and clarinet as well, but I'm primarily a saxophone player.
And why do they call it a woodwind? Saxophones and clarinets and flutes. Why do they call it a woodwind?
Sure. Well, they call them woodwinds. There's wood somewhere on the instrument. Is kind of the short answer.
Gotcha. So can you explain that a little bit deeper?
Yeah, this is a reed, right? So it's made of cane, wood, I guess. And so this goes on a mouthpiece, and then when you stick it on the mouthpiece, this is just sitting on the counter, and I've got a drawer full. This.
Oh my goodness!
Makes this sound. So without the reed, there's nothing. So that's what makes it a woodwind. But the flute doesn't have a reed. But the flutes, they're flutes around the world that are made of wood, and I suppose the first ones are probably made of that material. So that's why flute's a woodwind, even though there's no reeds on it. But the saxophone is the one that people commonly mistake. I think it's brass because it's shiny and metal, but it's a woodwind too.
Gotcha. So the wood on it, is it made from different kinds of wood? And if it is from different kinds of wood, do they make different sounds?
Reeds are traditionally made of cane. Throughout the decades, they've experimented with synthetic materials, like plastics and that. I think they have carbon fiber reed somewhere. I think I could be mistaken, but cane is the traditional material. And a clarinet, the body itself is made of wood. It's made of grenadilla wood. So yeah, those are the two common types of wood that you'd find on a woodwind instrument, I guess.
And would you suggest or not suggest switching out? Like, can you share your read with other students?
No, you probably shouldn't do that, especially now with germs and everything. But in some cases in the past, to troubleshoot things that might be wrong with the students, I have tried a student setup just to make sure that everything's cool, because
generally you want to use your own read.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not suggesting a kid do that. If you're professional, then you might consider doing that in very rare circumstances.
Yeah. And I play the drums, and so I have my own pair of drumsticks, but in the case that I need to, with drumsticks, you're using your hands. You're not putting it in your mouth. And so, unless you're Animal from the Muppets, but you got drumsticks and you can kind of share them with one another. But every drumstick has its own like feel to it. And I imagine the same thing, right, with a mouthpiece or a reed on a woodwind instrument.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's yes, and it depends on the mouthpiece too. Mouthpieces have different designs. There's different sizes of mouthpieces, and the variances in mouthpiece require different variances in reeds. And then there's ligatures, the rings that hold the reed on the mouthpiece. Those actually can make a difference too. Then there's the horn. It's a whole can of worms that you can get totally lost in and spend way too much money on.
Definitely. Now, how many instruments? How many instruments do you have in your house or in your studio?
Let's see. I have an alto, a soprano, a tenor, and I have backups for all of those. So I have 6 saxophones. I have another alto that's kind of a novelty, but it's an instrument, so it counts. So that's 7 saxophones. I got a flute, a piccolo, clarinet. Is that 10? I think that's 10.
Yeah.
10 instruments? Yeah.
And those are all that you're explaining. You said tenor, alto, soprano. Those are all types of saxophones, right?
You're correct. Yes. Yes.
And those saxophones, they're all in the saxophone family, but what makes like a soprano, and an alto, and another one, a baritone sax.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What makes it all? Yeah. What makes it like? How do you even choose? Like, if I'm a student in school, it's like,
right.
Like, how do you choose what you should play?
Right. Good question. Well, the saxophone is unlike a violin. Say, like you could play violin in first grade, and they give you a small violin, but those students are still are playing the same fingerings, I guess, and you're tuning the strings in the same sequence as you would tune a full-size violin. That's not really the case with the saxophone because it's a tube with holes in it. If you want it to be in a different key, you can't just tune it. You know what I mean? You can move the mouthpiece to intonate it and all that. But so if you're to begin, it's traditional to start on alto, and you kind of have to wait till you're big enough. Typically 4th, 5th grade is when it happens. But to back up to your initial question, soprano, alto, tenor, bari. If you kids can think about just your voice, when you're in a choir, you got the sopranos, which are the high voice. You got the altos, which are high but right under there. You got the tenors, which are kind of a mid low voice, and then you got your baritones, which are the low voices. Saxophones are the same thing. Generally, the smaller the instrument, the higher it is, and the larger the instrument, the lower it is. So if you catch a really small saxophone, in fact, it's so small that most of them don't look like a saxophone. Like this is a soprano right here. So this is the smallest one, so therefore it's a soprano. And then the next one up.
That makes total sense. The smaller it is, the higher the pitch. The larger it is, the deeper the pitch. That totally makes sense. That's why, like, in a band, you see, like a marching band, you see a tuba, and they're massive, and they wrap around you like a snake, and they make such a giant, like, throaty, just deep bass sound. And then you have something small, like with flutes. You have a piccolo flute that's like, super mini.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like a dog whistle.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So this is the alto. So she's bigger than the soprano. This is the one that's got a neck like that. So it attaches to that.
It kind of looks like a goose or a duck neck.
Yeah. And the tenor is bigger than this. I don't have a baritone. It's just a little funny joke in the jazz saxophone world. If you ever own a baritone, that's like, now you're the bari player that everybody calls. It's like, if you play any other saxophones, the moment you buy a bari, it's over. Now you're a Barry player.
that's okay. Gotcha. So
But
once
here's the tenor, so it's a little bigger than the altos.
oh yeah, that like takes up the entire screen.
Right.
Nice. That's great. I love that. So the Barry is like the bass, I guess you could say, of the saxes, right?
Yes, there is a bass saxophone out there.
Okay.
They're incredibly rare. And there are saxophones smaller than the soprano. The sopranino, I think there's a soprillo even. There's a contrabass saxophone. It gets crazy. But the ones that you mentioned and the ones that we're talking about are kind of what you would typically see in the professional world, and even in like a high school band or something like that, or a middle school band.
And what inspired you to pick up the saxophone and want to start playing at what age? And what inspired you to play an instrument like that?
Well, I was just like everybody else who started playing music. I was in elementary school, and there's an instrumental music assembly that we all went to, and I'm like, hey, that's cool. And so, no special story over here. It was just that. And I had tried a few things up until that point. I think I was in soccer, I was in Cub Scouts, a few things. Other things just didn't stick. And but when I started playing, it just I played piano also. I think that helped me because I had the reading down, So when I picked up the saxophone, it was like I kind of was one step further. So, but it just stuck. It chose me, I guess. I mean, the drums probably chose you, right?
Right, exactly.
We don't really have we really don't have much of a say in this. It kind of
right.
grabs
Yeah, the instrument definitely just chooses you. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of whatever sticks with you. Now, you talked a little bit about reading and stuff. So when you pick up your instrument, you know how to read music, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And how did you get to that point to read music like you read a book?
Well, I took piano lessons in first grade, and so that's when I started to read. But I wasn't a very good piano student. It was incredibly hard for me. The idea of reading two clefs at one time, when you're starting, the treble clef is your right hand and the bass clef is your left hand, and it was just kind of too many things to handle at once, and it was a lot of this and oops, that's wrong, and it was very slow and not fun, and but I still could read. Like I could point at a note and I knew what that was, and I could locate it. I knew what a half note was, what a quarter note was, et cetera, et cetera. So when the saxophone came along, it was like, you're only reading one thing at a time. So in comparison, it was so much easier. I mean, there are other things to deal with physically. You have to blow into the thing. There's the whole throat, tongue thing that that you don't have to think about when you play piano. But as far as the reading was just kind of naturally happened because of the piano.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a great foundation to start music. If you're not sure what kind of instrument to play, a piano is such a great foundation to play, just to move your fingers. And it's actually kind of a percussion instrument too.
Yes, it is.
With the hammer striking the strings or whatever you call it on the piano. So really, really cool. Now, did you listen to any sort of music that inspired you? Like, did you listen to a lot of jazz music that has saxophone in it? Or
yes.
Tell us about it.
Absolutely. I really lucked out that my second teacher, who I pretty much studied with from the very beginning, my first teacher I only had for like a week or two. So pretty much my first teacher that I had for a considerable amount of time. I mean, he right away set me aside and said, look, you need to listen to the great saxophone players. And I'm not talking about Kenny G. And Kenny G is a good player. I'm not saying anything about him, but as from a cultural perspective, there's lots more out there that's much culturally relevant to our identity as I guess Americans. It's American music, jazz music.
Right.
But yeah, he really hit me right away, and so I was kind of buying jazz records starting from about middle school. I was listening to John Coltrane records and Cannonball Adderley records and Charlie Parker records and people that most
Yeah, those are
normal people don't know, but musicians are like, oh yeah, you listen to that right away. That's a good thing.
Yep, exactly. And yeah, you mentioned some really great artists there. Cannonball, Charlie Parker. Those are great awesome musicians. It's kind of like, the go-to. And then when you study music at such a young age, it's so important to listen to the foundation, the greats of those musicians. And it's just fantastic. That style of music and just the history behind it is just incredible as well. And my brother actually started to play. He plays the saxophone as well, just like yourself. Started with the alto sax,
Mm,
and I believe the direction that you went is you went to college and studied saxophone and music. Is that correct?
yes, yep.
Very cool. So, students that are listening right now, you can actually go to college and study music. How cool is that? And you're an
it,
educator, right?
yes, yep, yep.
And
Yeah,
not
I never set out to do it, but it just kind of happened. Yeah.
and not only are you an educator, but you also record music for bands as well, right?
Oh yeah, I'm kind of like a paid music mercenary, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's freelancer. Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. There's something about music that really allows someone that, to really get outside of their comfort zone and to work with other people. So if you're an introvert, playing music will help you to, gain a new foundation or gain friends, other musicians and such. Yeah. And you don't even have to really say anything. You could just literally blow through a mouthpiece and you could communicate in an amazing way, right?
Oh gosh, you really nailed it on the head for me. I really struggle I do fine when I have to, but being in a large social environment, networking type situation is something that takes a lot out of me. I would prefer not to have to do that. And I'm so thankful for, I hate calling them skills, because, well, I guess they are, because the skills are acquired. I hesitate to call it a talent, because, I mean, to me, when I hear talent, you're just good at it right away. But I'm very grateful that I spent the amount of time because my networking is showing up to a rehearsal band at the Musicians Union, and all of a sudden sitting next to these incredible session players, and we talked very little. We talked during our breaks, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, but really for that entire hour and a half, no, 2.5 hour period, we're I forget how long those rehearsals are. Pandemic, but we're playing the whole time. We're just reading, improvising, and just reading charts down from beginning to end. And it's like, I like that because I don't have to talk and hang out.
That is so cool. I really want the students to hear that, because there's some students out there that are extroverts like myself, and then there's some students that are introverts that kind of like to keep to themselves or are just comfortable with reading a book, eating lunch by themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And playing music, you don't really need to say much. You just play and do your thing, and and it's super fun. It just brings people together. And I mean, who doesn't love music, right?
Right. Yeah.
My parents have gave this analogy before on how important music is in just the world in general. And that, have you ever seen a movie that didn't have any music in it? It really can make or break a scene, just by the synth or something else like that. So it's just so important to have that. And I love your story and the fact that you didn't stop at graduating from high school and going to IT or tech, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you kept with your dream and went to school and pursued music, and you're still playing music to this day. And I think that's really awesome. And I wanted the students to hear that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy too. I don't know what else I'd be doing.
Definitely. Also, I wanted to share, I talked a little bit about my brother. He actually joined the military and got to play music in the military. So instead of hoping,
which group was he in?
Yeah, so he was in the Army Reserve, and he was in, I forgot what exact band. It was up here in Northern California, but he would play like military ceremonies and
wow.
everything from promotions to funerals services, and then
those are those are prestigious groups to get in.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
awesome for you, brother.
Yeah. And, I wish he still played to this day. And he kind of like, he still has his instruments, but, I admire you because you're continuing on still doing it. My brother traded in his saxophone for a computer. So he's in IT now.
Oh.
Nothing wrong with that, though. We're in the
Computer can do a lot of things the saxophone can.
that is true. That is true. Definitely, definitely. And now I would love to have you recommend some type of music or maybe some artists that the students can listen to in case, they're interested in the saxophone. Would you recommend some?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I would listen to just the canon of classical music and the canon of jazz music. So I find them to be both very much related, even though you wouldn't think that. I think the building blocks of music come from those two genres, if you want to call them that, and if you really have an understanding and a handle of those things, and you can really play anything or really understand. And if you become a musician, you can really understand what's going on in everything, and rock and roll, funk, R&B, whatever.
Yeah.
From the class. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, you hit it right there. When I was starting to play the drums, it was recommended that I started listening to jazz first. And even though I wanted to listen to Metallica, Nirvana,
right, yeah,
those artists,
yeah,
I was told by my music teacher and by other mentors was like, no, you got to learn how to play jazz first. If you can play jazz music, you can play any style of music. And that is so true to this day.
right, yeah, totally, yeah. Yeah, so on the classical side, I would check out Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Chopin, Debussy, Ravel, all those guys.
Yeah.
And on the classical side, I would start with like Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Oscar Peterson, great piano player.
There's a lot.
I feel funny just naming these because it's old music to me when I was a kid, and it's like really old now.
But it's so important because a lot of the students out there are not going to know these names that you're mentioning. I know them because I grew up listening to it, but
right.
for a lot of parents that have kids that are listening to right now are from the tech world. We're in Silicon Valley here. That's where we're broadcasting from right now. And it's mostly Facebook, Apple, Google, and a bunch of startups around here. And performing arts is not really in that world. And so when you mention these names, these are so foreign to them. These are going to be brand new artists for them to listen to.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. When before like things got really crazy with the social media and all that, I remember really struggling, and I remember my teacher in the beginning struggling to get me to listen, mentioning these old people. So I just wanted to mention that what I've noticed ever since like Instagram like came out and like all these things, now there's like all these kind of like young players who recently graduated from these big music schools around the world, US mostly, that I'm aware of. And my high school students follow them on social media, and that's their in to listen to the old guys. You know what I mean? So
amazing. Yeah.
So I would recommend. I mean, I know our audience is consists of some young people who probably shouldn't have a device right now, but maybe you do. Hey, I'm not judging. I do that with our toddler just to get through the week, But if you're older and your parents let you, just find some heroes. They're out there. They're young heroes that you'll be able to relate to because they have social media handles. I'm not the promoting type. I have some things, not a lot, but I do have some things. But if that's your window in, then that's great, awesome. But then after that, you should check the source, go back to the source material, check out like all jazz from like the 30s, really there aren't great recordings from the 20s, 30s, 40s. The recordings started to sound really good, kind of the late 50s, all the way through present day. So, but the golden era, that really sweet spot. Here's a good recommendation. I met a guy once who was not a musician, and he had this insane record collection, and I had no idea. It's like, dude, you're like I forget what he studied, but I'm like, how do you have all these records? He had like 10 times the record collection I did. And then he was like, it's really simple. I bought Kind of Blue, the Miles Davis record, and then I looked at the personnel, and I bought all of those guys' records. And so it was kind of like a family tree. So there's Kind of Blue on top with Miles and Train and Cannonball and Bill Evans and Philly Joe Jones and Jimmy Cobb, Paul Chambers. And he would just like buy all the Miles records. He'd buy all the Cannonball records he could, buy all the Train records he could, buy all the Bill Evans records, et cetera, et cetera. And then he'd buy records of those those people had other cats on those records, and it was just kind of, that's how it happened. And that would be the way to do it.
That is cool. I love that recommendation so much. I like the way that he explained it too, because it's literally like a family tree where you start out with, one artist, and then you look at the musicians that played on that record, and then you kind of you go down this crazy rabbit hole, and then all of a sudden you got 10,000 albums sitting in your bedroom.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Very cool.
Or in the cloud now. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Well, now with, Spotify and the other streaming services, you have no excuse not to look up these artists. And then you'll go down another journey. Hey, you listen to Miles Davis. Now, why don't you listen to Thelonious Monk, right, yeah, and you just get crazy listening to all those kind of artists. So yeah, I love that. That's so cool. Now, Ian is a educator, and he actually teaches music virtually. If there's any students out there that are interested in learning about the saxophone, whether other woodwind instruments, what other instruments do you teach, Ian?
I teach flute and clarinet, but saxophone is my main, and I really specialize in transitioning the kids into improvising, because in the Western music world, we learn how to read first, and then improvising comes later, if you even get there. But in other musical cultures in the world, like say you go to Cuba, I mean, those kids come out of the womb and they're like playing the drums, like with clave and all that. It's like, geez, like what? They can't read. It's just in the air, and then it's not this thing that they have to do like it is in the US,
Right, right.
So it's really common for like a kid to be in high school to be like, okay, I'm in jazz band now, I have to improvise, or I'm in middle school now, I have to improvise now. I have no idea what to do, because from day one, they've learned how to read first. So that's kind of my specialty, to get the kids improvising. And I actually have examples on my website and on my YouTube channel of me actually improvising with my students.
Perfect. And what website can the students find you at, or parents, guardians find you at, to maybe book a trial lesson, and also just to listen to some music?
My personal website is ianvomusic.com, IANVO music.com. And after this interview, I should probably update it a little bit, but there's still good, relatively current stuff on there. You can read about my background, how I approach my students. I've got SoundCloud links to stuff that I've done, YouTube videos of stuff I've done, and stuff with my students, photos of gigs that I've done, just like everybody else.
Perfect. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, I had a chance. I checked out your website. It's clean website. You even get to see your dog on there. Yeah.
He died in August.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But it's all right, man. But I'm gonna leave him on there. It's kind of like a memorial for him,
Nice.
He's been the ambassador to my brand.
Yes, that is for sure. Well, I remembered your website from the dog chilling by the instrument. Yeah. Well, Ian, thank you so much for hanging out with the students here today. Students, give Ian a round of applause.
Bye.
They're so loud.
Thank you.
Ian, thank you so much for spending time with us here today, and just really inspiring us. We really honor the time that you spent with the students here today, and we hope to see many, many more saxophonists what do you call people that play flute? Flautists?
Sure, yeah, flutist, flautist, doesn't matter.
Okay, there you
It
go.
depends who you talk to. People have different opinions about that.
Nice. Very cool. Well, thank you again, Ian, so much. And we will see you next time for Show Our Students. Thank you for checking out us here today, for tuning in to your music appreciation class. You have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.